Hello, well, who were you in a past life? You've had many past lives. So let's talk about the history of past lives and how you can receive gifts, how it connects you to relationships, family groups. First, some of the current religions on this planet, Hinduism, I believe Muslims, I'm not sure about that, Buddhism, do believe in past lives. Any past life information was edited out of the Bible, but they didn't get everything. For example, a baby is born and they say, is this child born blind because of the sins of the father or his sins? So how could a newborn baby have sins unless it's been somewhere before? Now, I don't believe in sins, or I'm not a Bible thumper, but there are truths and stories in the Bible. A lot of it gets misinterpreted, and that's a whole nother video that I'm not going to get into here. But many children remember, especially under the age of 7, who they were, and we'll talk about a past life. Or when you meet somebody and feel like, I feel like I've known you I've always known you. Or you meet somebody and feel like, wow, I know you're not the right person to be around. Or you go to a place, you travel, and it feels like home. It feels like you've been there before. You may have dreams or flashes of memory. So I remember childhood, past lives, and then I started kind of pulling at that thread like you unravel a sweater by doing past life regressions, which I teach, and I'm going to be teaching a class in. So you can remember your past lives, partly by putting your attention on it, partly by asking, but certainly by doing a past life regression. So let's talk about some of the benefits of knowing who you are. That's number one. Who are you? To know thyself. There's a Greek temple in Delphi, and on top of the temple was carved in everything in moderation and know thyself. And the other one was something about mysteries, but that was scratched out. So learn the mysteries of the world. Okay. So to know yourself, to know thyself, and that you are forever. If you know that you are a spirit and you are here forever, then it's harder to manipulate you. It's harder for you to be afraid of death or controlled by others. That's why it was taken out of the Bible. Because if you think that you have to be a good or not a sinner to get to heaven, then you can be baited with fear. Now, is there a heaven? Sure, there's lots of places people can go. Shangri-La, there's just Valhalla, whatever, there's many places, and that's kind of a whole nother video too. Although many people have had past lives on other planets or dimensions. Now, I don't remember any past lives to this point. Maybe I should do a regression on myself with that. But I do feel I am from Palladian, the Palladians, and I do feel a connection to them. But I haven't yet remembered a past life from there. But most of us have had hundreds of past lives. So older souls have had like 800 or 1,000 past lives, where newer souls have had 200 or 300 past lives. So some of those past lives you may have died very young because they didn't have medical ways, to help people back then. Sometimes in histories where people died very young. It's also, you may have been here in the beginning of Earth. When Earth was being formed, there were many spirits coming in that were in the ethers, the air, the water spirits, the earth spirits, or the fire spirits. And so these past lives can be looked at when you look at your astrological chart. And there are ways that you can look at past lives through the north and south nodes in your astrological chart, which is what I do in my readings. It's a way of I tune in. I do some astrology as a way like to tune in. But so if you look at your chart and you see I have a lot of fire, a lot of earth, it's because that's part of who you are. Okay. So when you have been killed in a past life, you may come in if you have something unresolved with some kind of illness or a body marking. So when they say, was he born with the sins of his father or his sins? It's not because people are ill because they've done bad things. It's because the lesson wasn't learned. In other words, it is unresolved, because if that was true, all bad narcissistic people would be really sick and not well. They're under a different set of agreements. They do have past lives, but that's a whole nother video too. So if you come in with an illness or a body marking, you may have chosen in this life to learn about being special needs or being autistic or not coming in without a limb or coming in with something, because you're so on a soul level, you're here learning about that, as difficult as that may sound. And it may also be a challenge for you to heal yourself. Sometimes people come in as maybe special needs to teach. It's a highly advanced soul to teach other people about how they treat them, how they treat vulnerable people or people who are needing extra, have extra needs. So that can be the case. So it isn't necessarily that you come in with a body marking or an illness because you did something bad. I just want to be clear about that. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just an unresolved lesson. Like if you have a birthmark on the side of your neck, maybe you were shot in your neck and that's how you died, especially if it's a recent past life. So usually we kind of look the same, although we may be male or female, sometimes not. Depending on the race, we can incarnate in different races. Of course, we can be male or female. I've had many, many male lifetimes. I was meant to be a woman in this lifetime. And I chose that on a soul level. I'm probably also in one of my last lifetimes, unless I choose to come back here and be of service. Yeah, they just said yes to that, which I can when I cross over. I thought for a long time I needed to come back to help others. And I'm still, that's now up for how I come back. Or you can decide to go to other planets and other realms, or you can just go and take a rest or a break after this lifetime. Many of us probably want to rest, a resting time. Usually there are about 200 years between, 100, 200 years between each life. But after World War II, because of the changes we're going through now, many people started coming back really quickly. And when you do that, you're not really rested. So you can feel like you're always tired. And there's too much happening because you haven't really processed what happened, but your soul wanted to be here in this time because of the big shift that we're going through now. So a lot of souls, a lot of people are here, a lot of souls have chosen to come here and be through, because it's a learning experience, and we're also here being service. So if you have been of service, you may also carry that same as a narcissist or different type of human. The narcissist or sociopaths are like, and I'll get into that when I talk about Atlantis in a minute. There are different types of humans. And it does depend on where you come from. It doesn't mean you can't heal and wake up and grow. And we've all made mistakes. We've all done, been unconscious and done things that we wish we hadn't. And everything is here to teach us. So it's not about judging ourselves. What we do, the person who really judges us the most is ourselves, our higher self. There isn't some punishing God so much as like, how do you really feel, your higher self, about what you did as a personality and a body when you were not conscious in the land of shadows and illusions, which is where we are here, or in Earth School. We can call it a school to make it sound better. It is, sometimes it is just a school. Sometimes it's the place of a lot illusion and fear, which is kind of like what it is a lot now. So when you know your past lives, you can explain, like, why are you afraid of something? Like, I'm afraid of deep sea diving because of sharks. Even though I've had other lifetimes where I've lived in the water, I've had lifetimes where, not because sharks are evil, but because they're really big and you can't control them very well, and they're hungry. They want to eat people. And so I've had those experiences. I also am afraid of heights because I feel like I've fallen and or jumped before off of really high places. So they're not, I've healed myself from that. Well, I haven't healed myself from the sharks. I just don't go in over my knees too much in the ocean, even though I love the ocean. But you can do healings. You can do healing to clean out fear. But first you need to know, like, when you do the past life regression, you'll know, like, okay, what is it that I'm working on as a soul? Show me a life about that. Okay. So you can go back and do a past life regression to learn gifts, to find your talents, your hidden talents. Whatever you've done before in a past life, you bring that with you. It can color your world, how you think and how you feel. Or you can, like, if you were born into a group where they were not prejudiced, you just naturally know, like, I'm not doing that in this life, Or if you were a slave and then you come back, like, I learned my lesson. I don't think anybody should go through that. You see, so we're always learning and growing up emotionally and spiritually. But you can bring in gifts, like, how do you know how to paint like that? Or how do kids know how they're genius? They're artists. They're just naturally where your gifts and your talents. And so I found my gifts and talents is connecting with nature and my psychic abilities, because as I'll speak in a minute, tell you about some of my past lives where I did that, where I was connected to nature and to intuitive abilities. So we talked about importance of knowing yourself. Now, relationships, and we talked about, relationships and karma with family and soulmates and soulmates and twin souls. So a twin soul is somebody who you're just made for each other. There are no issues. So sometimes people choose to come in with their twin soul. And usually a couple like that is kind of high achieving. They're usually very spiritual. They don't or they're very just peaceful and happy. But like if you look at Jimmy Carter and June Carter, those were twin souls. They stayed together. They never had any issues, but they used their life to better and help everyone. They used their life as service. So you may use a copy couple that stays together for years and has generations. That's service. Being a good parent and a good grandparent and passing that down to generations. That's also service. You don't have to be the president. So let's also talk about, we'll get back to that. Let's also talk about famous people. I recently did a reading for somebody who was Louis the 13th or something. Now that's unusual. I did a reading for somebody who was an incarnation of Saint Francis. What a wonderful life. What a wonderful, to be that energy. So of that spirit. Most of the time we are not, like if someone says, I was Jesus in a past life. I'm like, Or you could have known Mary Magdalene or Jesus. That's true. You could have been around. You could have been a famous person. I used to work with somebody who was the Mona Lisa in one lifetime. So that's totally possible. But think of a very powerful spirit like Jesus. If he were to splinter off into, or his ancestors or his energy into hundreds of souls, how beneficial that would be. Or Buddha, who's incarnated Buddha. And yes, they still keep their power, but they spread their energy. So it's kind of like that. But we're here to become our own ascended master, our own Buddha, our own Jesus, our own earth angel. We're not here to become somebody else. Although you could be incarnate from a famous life. You'll probably, someone has told you that if you've had a reading or you've done a past life regression, that will come to you when the time is right. So I've done many past life regressions, but I just wanted to touch in about famous people. So I've had past lives as a special needs boy that died by the side of the road. I've had past life, and it was to teach other people about how they treated me. And also because I wanted on a soul level to dissolve my ego. So that's why I chose that. I died at about 17 by the side of the road by myself because there was no one. So that was an important lesson for my soul. When we have painful lives, a lot of times we're learning compassion. We can choose to get bitter or better. And so I chose to dissolve my ego and to become better because of that and to be more compassionate because of that. I've also had a past life is who knew? Well, I'll tell you my past life. Okay. But about getting back to soulmates and twin souls and family groups usually incarnate together. You may incarnate with the same guides, or sometimes the guides have evolved in the family. The person has evolved in the family and then become a guide. And when you become a guide like that, you have to follow certain. It's not like a ghost or some disincarnate being that's here. You have to follow the rules of spirit guide. You have to go to spirit guide school, and you can't interfere with people's lives. People here have free will. And so you're not allowed to do that. There are certain guidelines. Now, deceased people around you may have not gone there and may have an agenda or, tell you like, oh, you shouldn't do that, or try to influence you. They may be well-meaning or not, but they haven't gone to spirit guide school usually, unless they're really connected into their higher self. That's a whole nother video. Okay. So, let's talk about, I talked about, well, soulmates are people that you're here to learn something from. And so in this life, I chose not to come in with my twin soul, who is in spirit, but I chose to come in, my higher self chose to clean up karma with 3 different people. And I looked at those relationships. I didn't know when I was getting involved what those relationships were about. But in past lives, they killed me or did something to me, and there was unresolved karma. And so in this life, I've had to forgive them. And some of them, I lived through the relationship. And one was very violent, my first husband. And I ended karma with him by getting away from him and living, okay, and setting boundaries, okay, with him. So that's how I ended karma. So I chose to come in. A lot of times healers will find people to be in relationship that need a healing. So another husband, I stayed with him, my second husband, for over a decade, and he would do all kinds of horrible things, and I could never leave him till I discovered that I had made a past life vow when he was, it was way back in the beginning of time here on Earth, and there was an avalanche, and he was crushed under a rock, and I couldn't get him out, and we were young lovers, and I vowed to always stay there. I said, I'll never leave you. I'll always take care of you. And then when I met him in each lifetime, I was always there for him until in this lifetime, I finally realized I'm ending karma with you. I'm done. And I finally got out of that marriage. Okay. So these are all karmic lessons. A lot of times people think, you think a psychic has a good relationship. Well, that's somebody, then they know about relationships, or you can learn about relationships from bad relationships. I already know how to have a good relationship, so I don't need to learn about that. But I needed to end karma with these three people. Another one was when I was a Knights Templar. I was betrayed by somebody who I then met and married in this lifetime. And he did the same thing to me again. But this time which I don't recommend taking someone to court. I was able to take him to court and get back a lot of my money, which I did it. I did it once, and my guide said after that you're done with him, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. So I don't agree with what he did was okay to me, but I've let go of wanting. I don't want revenge. I don't want to be involved with him, and he's going to have to answer for what he did, and I have to answer for why I allowed myself to not have boundaries. And so there was something I needed to learn from those, and it made me stronger. Because I dove into my spirituality so I could survive those, and it made me who I am. And I finally decided to choose myself, to choose to love myself. And so that there are lessons that you're learning that may sound simple, but not so easy until you actually live through them. So that was a part of the cleaning up my karma here on earth that I did in this lifetime. I've also been a prostitute in a past life. So back when it was thought of more as a service and not so, there wasn't religion around so much, but okay. I had a past life as an exorcist. Okay. So that was interesting. So I just intuitively knew when I started doing this work, and I used to get a lot of those types of situations. I don't anymore because I've worked through that energy. I don't do that kind of work anymore. I do it on a smaller scale to help people let go of their fears or whatever, but I'm not an exorcist. I'm not a demonologist in this life. And I was the lesser known Sumerian's goddess of dawn. I remember that lifetime. I remember being in like the sun and connecting with little animals. And to this day, I'm always a morning person. I love the sun. My rising is in Leo. I'm just really, the sun and the light makes me happy. When the sun sets, I go through kind of a change in the evening where I can really feel like the energy shifting. So when I was there were many goddesses in Sumeria. I'm not saying I was somebody famous, but knowing that about myself really makes sense, and I really understand and I connect with the sun and the light. And I also remember lifetimes in Sumeria, other lifetimes in Sumeria, where I was connected to the goddess Ishtar and the sisterhood of Ishtar. And I remember being in like these ponds and kind of cooing and floating, almost kind of like mermaid-like energy of being really connected to singing. And in this life, I've discovered my voice and healing sounds that I do with my voice, and my connection to nature. And so I remember that as a time that was very peaceful, and I was very happy and very much in balance. So I remember lots of lifetimes in Lemuria, or several. And in Lemuria, I was just really connected to healing or higher consciousness. And so that's where I get my healing abilities from. I also have had a couple of past lives in Egypt where where I would set the energy for the temple, for the grounds, and whatever wasn't in balance, I would make in balance. And now wherever I go, everything has to come into balance without me even doing it. Whatever I did back then, it and it's kind of makes me really empathic. So it's a gift, but it's also like, wow, I don't want to heal everywhere I go. But if I go somewhere, I'll see the spirits there and what needs healing, and then I'll start processing it. So sometimes I just like to stay home because I don't want to heal the whole planet every day. I need a day off. So, but it's a gift from that time. I also remember being a healer, a male. In this life, I looked different because I was smaller and I had dark skin, and I would put my hands over people and heal them. So I used to do a lot of table work, and so that would happen like that. So I was a woman who lived with wolves, a shaman, and that was an interesting life. That gave me gifts. I remember lifetimes also in South America where I was mostly, I don't know that I lived very long, but I remember living in Inca or Aztec, or what do you call it? Aztec or Inca temples. I remember my parents, they used to come from that lifetime, they used to come around me as guides. And I remember Atlantis. So in Atlantis is very connected to what's going on here, because in Atlantis, we had two types of people. Let me back up first to Lemuria. In Lemuria, we were all very high consciousness, peaceful. We were healers. We were more etheric in our bodies, were lighter, and the planet was newer. And we were all here to kind of set the energy of the planet to bring it into peace and harmony with nature, like with the dolphins and the killer whales, and then the wolves came later. But it was a very peaceful, harmonious time. And then as other humans and other beings from other places started to come here, we didn't set boundaries. And so Lemuria moved into like High Brazil, which is like an island sort of, maybe like kind of like Hawaii used to be, but it's underwater now because of earthquakes. But we moved there to stay to set the energy. But what happened is we didn't set boundaries and we got contaminated. And so that's kind of like what's happening now, is there are two different peoples here, and that's what happened in Atlantis. There are people who are more warlike and violent and seek to have power over, and they're really about money and what you have, and they teach other people that everything's about, climbing the ladder of success and getting what you need, and they're very cruel. And that's just who they are, that they can, I suppose some people are there that aren't really, they're just following, they're not really part of that, or they may be waking up because of what's going on now. And then the Lemurians, I'm reincarnated in Atlantis as a more peaceful, cooperative people, but they didn't know how to deal with these violent, power grabbing people. So they kind of like blamed themselves and didn't really do anything. So the power hungry people kind of blew up Atlantis with a big crystal. And that's where you have the Bermuda Triangles and these places in the ocean where the energy goes haywire, because they actually blew a hole in the vortex. I know this sounds crazy, but they affected the energy. And none of this is in our history books, but we're starting to understand because of psychics and intuitives and sages and mystics about what really has happened here on Earth. And they don't want you to know that because it's happening again. Whether you believe in all that or not, that's fine. But it is happening now. There's almost like there's two groups of people here. So as the more peaceful, cooperative beings, we need to really now stand up and set boundaries and push back so that they can't destroy this one. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. A lot of information. If you're taking my past life regression class, this is one of the requirements to watch this video because I have a lot of information here. And we'll hope to see you soon. Please subscribe if you enjoy my videos. It really helps me out. It's totally free. And it really helps me out. Thank you so much. And bye for now.